Many years ago, the great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said, because it is there. Well, space is there, and we're going to climb it. And the moon and the planets are there, and new hopes for knowledge and peace are there. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked.
The Air Force was getting rid of their chimps. They didn't care where they went. They didn't care if they got retired. They didn't care if they got pushed down a disposal. They didn't care if they went to research. They were getting rid of them. The Air Force gives most of its chimpanzees to a laboratory with the worst record of primate care in the history of the Animal Welfare Act. And that's when we decided to sue the Air Force. After a year-long battle, we gained custody of 21 chimpanzees. They arrive here, we introduce all 21, form a family, and we put them out on the island. About 3 months later, I'm standing up at the island, reveling in my victory and the victory of the chimps, when my phone rings, and it's Fred Colston of the Colston Foundation. He is interested to talk to me about perhaps taking over his laboratory and 266 chimps. So it wasn't until I went there that I got to see where these chimps really came from, what kind of dungeons they really lived in. And it's no exaggeration to say they lived in cement boxes.
I actually used to work in a primate laboratory. When Dr. Noon took over what was the Colston Foundation, she offered me a job. From working in the laboratory, I had become opposed to using chimps and monkeys in laboratory experiments. And so to have an opportunity to rescue chimpanzees instead of watching them have to go through what they go through in the lab was very appealing to me.
I'm calling this year my big transition year. It's when I'm starting to move the operations from New Mexico to Florida. I'm calling the moves the Great Chimpanzee Migration.
The chimpanzees in New Mexico live in steel and concrete cages. Many of them lived alone for many, many years, so we're slowly introducing them to each other in family groups. And once they're in a family group, then we will prepare them for the trip to Florida. We get them in their transport boxes, we make sure they have blankets, they have a few toys with them, and then we load them up in our trailer that we had specially made for their trip. And every chimp has a window seat so they can see the country, they can see the world go by on their way to Florida, 10 chimps at a time, and until all of the cages in New Mexico are finally empty. Once they got here, everyone went into their new home without hesitation. It was almost as if they knew, finally, this is my final destination, and I don't have to go through anything like that ever again. No more research, no more traveling. This is home.
How often do you talk to someone who's exactly where they want to be every day? Every day I get up and I go up and I say good morning to Marty, and I'm the one grinning. He's simply waiting for the oatmeal. I'm exactly where I want to be. I don't know many people who can say that. It's very nice to live on a 3-acre island, but once in a while you'd like a toy to play with or a Game Boy. So we give them various enrichment devices, raisin boards and the foraging boards and stuff like that.
Our plan for Save the Chimps is first to get all the chimpanzees in New Mexico moved here to Florida and settled on their islands.
And once that's over, the very next thing I want to turn my attention to is an education center. We're not open to the public. You can't come and see chimpanzees on display here. But what I'd like to do is put together an educational center where you can see the chimps on TV, where you can learn about them, you can learn about the lives that they've led, these Air Force chimps and the others, in research. You can learn about lives of chimpanzees in the wild. You can learn about what's happening to them in the wild.
We do this because we feel the chimpanzees deserve it, because they have suffered at human hands and they don't deserve that. They deserve to have a free life in their homeland of Africa, but we can't give that to them because we've taken away everything that they know.
One of the things that a lot of people ask me about is, how do you justify taking care of chimpanzees when there are children starving in the world? And for me, I don't believe that the world is divided into two parts, starving children and chimpanzees. I think the world's a lot more complicated than that. And I think because chimpanzees are so like us in so many ways, that I think helping chimps is helping the world in general. If they disappear from the face of the earth, our closest relative, how far behind can we be?
Chimpanzees are amazing people, is what Dr. Noon always says, and she's absolutely right. They are incredibly intelligent. They have such depth of feeling. They don't hide their emotions, so you know when they're suffering, you know when they're happy. And to see these guys go from coming out of the lab, in which they were fearful and thin, timid, to Florida, where their hair grows, they become robust, they become confident, and you can see that they're happy, is truly an amazing experience.
My greatest need now and always will be funding. This is a big project. I've got over a $2 million a year budget. Most people say, I had no idea. And when they see pictures of the lab, they say, I had no idea. Well, now you have an idea.